Hey, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of the Legends of Sport podcast presented by Fujifilm. I'm your host, Andy Bernstein. This week's guest is one of the world's most renowned sports broadcasting personalities, the great Jim Lampley. Jim and I crossed paths so many times during our careers, especially at big boxing events in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, even Los Angeles, but we never actually met. So it was a pleasure for me to chat with Jim on this episode. Jim's new book is called It Happened, A Uniquely Lucky Life in Sports Television. And it's a terrific account of his 50 years in broadcasting. Jim has definitely covered it all, my friends. 14 Olympic Games, hosting ABC's Wide World of Sports, 30 years calling boxing on HBO, which led to his induction into the Boxing Hall of Fame. So many years covering tennis at Wimbledon, the 92 Dream Team, 1980 Miracle on Ice, and practically every other sport known to mankind. Jim's book is a very personal account of how so many opportunities presented themselves at just the right time in his life. I really appreciated his frankness and openness about all the highs and lows of a career in sports. I can certainly relate to so many of them myself. A wonderful conversation with the legendary Jim Lampley. I hope you all enjoy it, and as always, I'll see you on the backside. Hey, Jim, it's Andy Bernstein here. How are you, man?
I'm doing okay, Andy. How are you?
Dude, I love that wall. I wish I could do that. I filled it up with photos, as you can see, but from my career. But I have boxes and boxes of credentials. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting how rapidly credentials can fill up a wall. I have 3 of these walls.
It's crazy.
They I'm tremendously blessed. It's not bragging if it's a fact, but these walls are populated by boxing credentials, by Olympic credentials, 14 of them, by golf credentials, by college football credentials, by pro football credentials. I have all sorts of credentials. I will say boxing credentials, by and large, are the most artistic and the best.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with that. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes
they're usually plastic rather than cardboard.
Yeah.
Have some form of artwork on them, so it's really good.
Well, listen, man, I want to welcome you, Jim Lampley, to the Legends of Sport podcast presented by Fujifilm. So great to meet you, Jim. I mean, it's so bizarre that both of us have been in pro sports and sports in general for like 50 years each. You
Really?
a couple of years more than me. I retired last season after 43 years on the court as the NBA photographer, 45 years total. I'm still shooting every once in a while, but you know, you and I crossed paths. I mean, I started to jot it down as I was reading your book. By the way, tremendous book. Love it. We're going to plug the hell out of it. Really amazing book. We'll get into that in a minute. But
thank you.
But you and I crossed paths so many times. I mean, like big fights in Atlantic City, Vegas, tennis, Dream Team, Oscar in 92. I'm just taking stuff right out of your book. You were a longtime anchor in LA where I live. I watched you religiously. So it's so great to finally meet you, man. I would see you at boxing matches. I'd be ringside or elevated and see you doing your thing, you know, from the side of the ring. So anyway, thanks and welcome to the podcast, my friend.
It's my privilege. I confess that if there's one media area where I never did meet enough people, it's photographers. Obviously, way back at the beginning, I was friends and dining partners sometimes with Leifer and Klutmeyer, who were not necessarily tremendous fans of each other, but were great
Yeah, yeah,
practitioners of their craft and really interesting people.
yeah, yeah.
Particularly Heinz, who had a global background to begin with.
Yeah, well, sadly, we lost Heinz almost a while ago, right? This past year. And Neil, I'm glad you brought up photography, by the way, because I have it in here as something we want to talk about. Neil was my first mentor, quite frankly. There's a whole story about
Really.
that. But as a student, I wrote him a letter, and I reached out and said, I'd love to meet with you. He sent me a letter back. Yeah, kid, come to the apartment and we'll meet and see where it goes. So a 10 as you can relate, because you've been with Neil, a 10-minute conversation turned into 2.5 hours. But,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He
yeah,
is nothing if not valuable.
yeah, I know.
But an amazing guy with an amazing background. Coincidentally, my first wife, who is still alive and beating lymphoma in Tucson,
Mm,
went to Innsbruck with me in 1976.
mm-hmm.
And Neil needed do you call it a grip? Do you call it an
Yeah, yeah,
assist?
assistant.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
assistant.
and she somehow got that gig and spent the whole 16 days
Oh my God.
working with Neil and following around. She nicknamed him the Strawberry.
Yeah,
Uh, and I said, "Why do you call him the Strawberry?" She
yeah.
said, "Look, he looks like a strawberry."
He is something else, man. He's still going strong at 80 something. He just told me recently he's moving to Connecticut, the Neil Leifer Museum, which was his apartment. I don't know if you ever were there, but literally a museum to him, his work. He's leaving that and taking the show to Connecticut, which is amazing at his
Probably the
age.
most reproduced boxing photo of all time,
Oh,
right?
oh, for sure.
Ali with the arm cocked like that.
For sure.
And,
For sure.
and the fabulous footnote relative to that photograph is if you look through Ali's legs,
Yeah.
there's a person in the foreground who Merchant told me was an AP writer. I think his name was Berg or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And then the next face back,
Uh-huh.
one row back beyond that guy is Larry, the
Yeah.
very young
Wow.
Larry with his jaw dropped and his mouth open in a very Larry expression,
Oh,
wide-eyed, etc. It's a great photo, and he's right there. It's as though he was positioned and centered
yeah.
in the between the legs. So
Unbelievable. Well, the person between Ali's legs looking up, balded guy, glasses, that's Herb Scharfman, the great Herb Scharfman, one of the
Herb Scharfman, yes, that's right.
right.
Merchant told me that name.
Yeah, and there's a whole story which I don't know if you know, Jim, but anyway, Neil was a young whippersnapper photographer for SI. Herb was, the grizzled veteran. And of course, like you said about Heinz and Neil, there wasn't a lot of love lost between those SI competitive guys, That's what gave them the edge. But rumor has it, or legend has it, that Neil showed up early and didn't like the spot that the promoter had given him, switched his spot with Herb, so that Herb was on the other side of the ring
And wound up in the photograph.
and in the photo. And I got to meet Herb
Wow.
years later after he retired. I became the Dodgers photographer. First guy I met at Dodgertown, 1984, was Herb Scharfman, who told me that story probably within the first 5 minutes. And I don't want to say it ruined his life, but it just was such a pivotal moment, And now he's memorialized between Ali's legs.
Amazing credit to the Strawberry
Yeah.
for having the foresight to realize that he
Yeah.
wanted to be on the other side of the ring.
Yeah.
Because if you take the photo from Scharfman's position, it's nothing.
No, it's the back. But, of course, Neil denies that, and I love him dearly, so I'm going to tell this story publicly as many times as possible, but he'll deny it till the day he dies, So, Jim, right off the bat, and it's so great to have you, man. I want to talk about George Foreman. We just lost George Foreman recently, one of your dearest friends. You write so eloquently about him. He wrote the prologue to your book. You said a lot of things about George, but you said, quote, he understood the craft of boxing, and he was a great partner with you in the ring. You have any George stories that you could give us today? Something maybe that wasn't in the book, or a little anecdote or something?
Yes. I don't think it's in the book.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment, there's a lot of time at ringside. There's a lot of downtime at ringside
Mm-hmm.
before fights, during the preliminaries, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And there was one moment in time when I had been living in Park City, Utah. I was very excited about having moved to Park City. I um, had started a restaurant there. It had been a long time dream of mine
Mm-hmm.
to own a restaurant. It felt like having a party with your friends every night.
Mm-hmm.
And my then wife was a tremendously accomplished and famous news anchor
Mm-hmm.
who had anchored news with me in Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
and now was out of the business
Mm-hmm.
and was ready to be a ski wife living in Park City, or so she said, and didn't like driving down the mountain in the mornings to take the kids to school
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes it was snowing and the drive could be a little bit treacherous, etc.
Yeah.
And so after a couple of years, she demanded, I want a house on the flats. I want a house at the bottom near the school, because that will make me have so much more peace of mind, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
I bought this gorgeous house right in the entryway to Park City. It was the first major house you saw coming up the boulevard into town.
Mm-hmm.
It was picturesque. It had views of all three ski mountains. It was really a really great house.
Mm-hmm.
And within 2 months of having bought and moved into that house, Bree got a news anchoring offer in San Diego, and she decided that she wanted to take the offer. She wanted to take our two kids and leave
Mm-hmm.
and go back to San Diego and dump out of the whole Park City enterprise. And I was furious. I was so torn up about it. Yeah, I mean, I just started the restaurant. We're doing fabulous business, particularly during Sundance. The kids love it here, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
This is just about you and wanting to go back to your news anchoring career. And in the middle of all that, we were doing a fight, and I think it was in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been Reno, but we were ringside somewhere. And in the downtime before we went on the air, I was bitching and moaning and, cursing her and saying all sorts of hard-bitten things about, the idea of moving out of Park City so that she could go back to the anchor desk. And all of a sudden, George, having listened for a while, came over and put that giant hand on my shoulder and said, Jim, let me tell you something. It's a thing. To you, it's something else because of what you put into it. But at the end of the day, it's just a house. It's a thing. You've owned houses before, and you will own houses in the future. And you have lived in different places, and you will live in different places in the future. And it isn't worth the strife, the turmoil, and the anger you're projecting about this. Get
Mm-hmm.
over it and
Wow.
give her what she wants.
Wow. Okay.
And it was amazingly adept advice for my life.
Mm-hmm.
Be
Yeah.
that conflict in my life. And the way to avoid that conflict was to simply say, sure, I, I, I gave you the house. It doesn't fit your needs. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll get you back on the air, et cetera, et cetera. And um, if he had not said it in the way that he said it, I don't know that I would have really gotten the point. But he was a person of such unshakable common sense that when he said it to me the way he said it, and particularly in that setting at ringside with that big hand on my shoulder, I, I got it. I thought to myself, he's right, and I'm wrong, and I'm going to stop making this display because we need to smile, have fun, call a fight here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was George at his best. Common sense, the human touch, um, caring for other people more than caring for himself. He saw me being small, and he essentially put his hand on my shoulder and said, don't be small, be big. And he was right.
It was a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that, my friend. You know, I'm remembering in your book when you talk about a similar situation with Jack Nicholson at a pivotal time in your life, and reaching out to Jack and him being sort of the word, the sage, giving you words of wisdom that sort of help you pivot a little bit, right? It seems like people have come along in your life, not by accident, but it just, as you say, it happened. But it's wonderful that you could have that memory of him. What a great memory, man. Jim, I want to talk. I mean, there's so much to talk about, so I'm trying to break this down. But I love the fact that it was your mom that gave you the first exposure to boxing. She sat you down in that room and said, "Watch this." Is that where the love of boxing started for you? Way back?
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
She sat me down in a guest bedroom at a party in Hendersonville, North Carolina,
Uh-huh.
and because uh, she didn't want to leave me with a sitter or something like that, but she
Mm.
wanted to go to I think it was a holiday style party,
Mm.
and she took me down a hallway into a guest bedroom. There was a small television set on a TV dinner tray,
Mm.
and she said, "Sit right here." Now, this is 1955.
Oh, wow.
My father had died August 1, 1954, of cancer.
Mm.
Uh, she was the second of my mother's husbands, or he was the
Mm-hmm.
second of my mother's husbands to die.
Mm.
Uh, so we're living in his hometown of Hendersonville, North Carolina, but she was popular there, had friends there. And she's at the party, walked me down the hall, put me in front of that television set and said, "Sit here. And you're going to watch Sugar Ray Robinson versus Bobo Olson for the middleweight championship of the world on Gillette Friday Night Fights. And the reason you're going to do this is because if your father was still alive, this is what he would be doing, and you would possibly be doing it with him."
Mm.
And the only other thing I'll tell you is that Sugar Ray Robinson is my favorite fighter because he dances when he fights.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
There's my mother guiding me into the path that she thought my father would have ordained. There's my mother imparting to me her preference for a very showy, very dramatic Black American fighter,
Mm.
despite having grown up in what I knew to be a starkly racist household
Mm.
in
Mm.
Nashville, Tennessee. I knew her parents.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know how to pronounce the word Negro,
Mm-hmm.
and nor did my father's parents,
Mm-hmm.
but my mom did. And my mom was somehow devoted to the idea that racial equality and racial justice were the most important values for us in our going forward enterprise.
Mm.
And so she sat me down. She instructed me to appreciate Sugar Ray Robinson. She didn't tell me to root for the white opponent.
Mm.
And the last thing she said was, "And in the next 90 minutes, a man named Don Dunphy is going to tell you everything you need to know about."
Wow.
And
Okay.
I watched the fight, and
Yeah.
I listened to Don Dunphy, and I developed a habit of watching Gillette Friday Night Fights. It became a regular thing for me.
Huh.
And she sometimes would sit and watch the fight with me, but once we moved to South Florida so that she could go out and sell life insurance door to door, quite often I was alone watching the fights by myself
Huh.
and listening to Don Dunphy.
Yeah.
And of course, then I worked at ABC Sports for 13 years, where in 1987, an executive who had been put in charge of the sports division after a new company, Capital Cities, had bought ABC,
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get rid of me.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to banish me from the ABC Sports roster of commentators. And he thought, just supposing, didn't really ask or know anything,
Mm-hmm.
he thought that the way to embarrass me was to assign me to cover boxing. I would be seen by the audience as the successor to Cosell. That would be bad. It was sure to be a sport about which I didn't know anything. That would be bad. He could get rid of me by putting me in a position where I would fail. He didn't know
Yeah.
about my mother. He didn't know about Don Dunphy. He didn't know about my passion and devotion to Muhammad Ali. He didn't know that I had watched hundreds of fights.
Mm.
And during that year, 87 and 88, before I left ABC, when I was calling fights with a tremendous expert commentator named Alex Wallow, people would ask me, is Cosell your model for blow by blow? Is that who you hear in your head?
Mm.
And I said, no,
Mm.
absolutely not. My model for blow by blow is Don Dunphy. And to the degree that I can hear him in my head, that's good. Precise, clipped, measured, not too many words, a minimal narration of the fight for television purposes. That's what Dunphy did. That's what I tried to do. I think it turned out well for me. I don't know that I was ever really as good as Don Dunphy. He was great.
Well, I don't know if Don Dunphy's in the Boxing Hall of Fame, but you certainly are, my friend. So I guess Don did something right, getting this young kid motivated and interested. You know, I had a similar experience with my dad, who was I only bonded over sports with my dad, you know, growing up in New York, Mets fan, Rangers fan. And then I paid that back to him by taking him to various events, the Dream Team in '92. Then I was taking him to boxing. And I was trying to remember before this interview, we were at a fight, and my dad would be, you know, I'd be up by the ring, which is kind of high. You had to stand on a box and everything. And he would be down below in a chair loading film, you know, because that's what we did. You know, you had to have an assistant load film. I showed him how to do it. There's my dad sitting there loading film. It was some crazy fight. I think it was a Razor Ruddock fight. I don't know if you called it or you remember it, but there was a brawl at the end of the fight. Do you remember this? Like, all hell broke loose.
Are you talking about the brawl in Madison Square Garden?
No, this was definitely in Vegas.
Riddick Bowe versus Andrew Galata?
No, it wasn't that one.
So was it Ruddock versus Tyson in Las Vegas?
It was Ruddock, Tyson, or yeah, it was one of those. Anyway, all hell breaks loose, and you know, guys are coming over me on top and everything, and I'm trying to take pictures, but I'm trying to like save my ass too. And I look down, and my dad's nowhere to be found. Like, did my dad get flattened like Wile E. Coyote? It's like, I don't know what happened.
Part of valor, huh?
No, and then, you know, it took a while for the cops to come and the whole thing, and then I'm on like a search and destroy mission. Like, where's my dad? He crawled under the ring. He's like in the middle of the ring, under the ring. He goes, I wasn't in World War II for nothing, kid. It was just a great moment, man. It just reminded me when you tell that story about your mom.
That's interesting. So both of our dads were in World War II.
Yeah.
My father was a bomber pilot. B-17, B-24, then B-29.
Wow.
Off-site at the end of the war. Was your dad infantry?
Yeah, my dad was Army. He was in the 10th Mountain Division, the original ski troops. He's a kid from Brooklyn who never put skis on in his life. And all of a sudden, he's fighting the Japanese in the Aleutian Islands. So, you know, wow. But he fell in love with and it's a similar path for you. I mean, he fell in love with skiing, just like you fell in love with broadcasting and boxing. Ended up later in his life moving back to Colorado. And wow. He, you know, that's where he passed away, but it was a wonderful place for him. Jim, you know, a couple of times in your book, you talk about like the hard pivot that you had to take between being a sports commentator and a news reporter, right? I mean, the Miracle on Ice was one, right? And then the Atlanta bombing in '96, right? I was there. I was actually in the plaza when that happened, in the House of Blues, staying across the street at the CNN hotel. They wouldn't let us back in the hotel for like 9 hours. And that was such a crazy time. But for you, you know, in your book, it's so interesting how you talk about it, that you just had to switch gears on the fly and just get it done, right? And the other thing that shocked me, which I didn't realize, was that the Miracle on Ice in 1980 was taped. I had no idea that was.
You didn't know that?
I had no idea.
That's the. I mean, that is the bizarre element of the legend of the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
That 99% of the people who saw the hockey game saw it on videotape.
That's crazy.
And not live. And, you know, and if it happened today under the same circumstances, the outcome would have been completely deflated by the fact that everybody would have known.
Right.
But in those days, it was possible in 1980, if you wanted to avoid knowing the result, you could do so. So a huge percentage of the American population purposely avoided knowing the result,
Yeah.
and therefore watched with suspense the astonishing events that took place on the ice.
Yeah, crazy. And you think you said it was a 5 o'clock start or something, some bizarre, weird time. And
The United States Olympic Committee
Mhm.
and the Hockey Federation had both looked into the idea. They wanted to move the game from 5 o'clock to prime time so that the audience could be serviced. The Russians simply pointed to the schedule and said, semifinal game, 5 o'clock Friday. It has been there in our planning for months, whatever, etc. The game is at 5.
Yeah.
We're not changing. Be there or be square.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took place in effect in downtime between afternoon programming and primetime programming.
So crazy.
Yeah, 90% of the country didn't see it.
And I love the fact that like the bat phone rang, like the red phone rang, right? This Rune Arledge said,
Something I had never
Lampley,
seen.
get the interview, right? It's crazy. Yeah.
Go there and get, nowadays we would call it an asset. Rune didn't call it an asset. He said, go and find somebody to interview.
Yeah.
And at this point, the game was tied. And after one period, and had been tied at the end of the first period on a last-second goal by Mark Johnson, who for 2 weeks was the hottest goal scorer in the world. And Rune was known for his golden gut, for the ability to foresee that something significant was going to happen where other people might not have foreseen it. And the golden gut told him that hockey game might turn out with an unusual result. And he called, he asked someone in the control room, probably Dick Ebersol, where's Jim Lampley? And somebody figured out that I was in an edit bay editing a feature piece for the closing ceremony show on all of the political and news stuff that I had covered in the preceding 2 weeks. And so I was sitting there with a producer and a tape editor, and we were doing that work, and the red phone rang. Now, I had been at ABC Sports for 6 years, and I had always seen the red phone. It was in every control truck. It was in every edit bay. It was there was a red phone everywhere, but I'd never seen one ring.
Yeah.
And now the light went on. Da, da, da,
Oh my
there's
God,
the light.
that's crazy. Yeah.
And three of us are sitting there, and we all look at it, and we all look at each other, and both the tape editor and the producer kind of say, "That's yours." And so I picked up the phone, and I recognized his voice. He said, "Hey, is Jim Lampley there?" I said, "Rune, this is me. What are you doing?" Told him what I was doing. Drop that. Get over to the hockey arena and get in and find a place where you can watch the game. Don't get thrown out. You know your credential might not work, but get in there. And I said to him, I said, "Rune, I don't have the right credential. I can't get into hockey." And he said, "You'll find a way." And I hung up the phone. And I walked over to the hockey arena, which was no more than 200, 250 yards through the snow from where we were in a temporary edit facility. And the first person I ran into at the hockey arena was the high school hockey coach who was the venue manager for the games. And I had met him. I don't know how I met him. I don't remember that. I just remember that I knew that face.
Yeah.
And when I went over to him and said, "I really need to get in." "Okay, fine, go ahead." And I went in and stood on a camera platform. And you know the Harry Chapin detail, right?
Yes, the Harry Chapin story, but you got to tell it here just, briefly.
So, there was one other person on the camera platform who wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Heavy hulking guy in a classic olive drab pea coat, long kind of greasy hair. And I'm looking at him and I know why I'm there.
Yeah.
Men, I know why they're there. They've all got ABC credentials. This guy has a credential of some sort. And he's, 6, 8 feet away from me, and I'm looking and looking. And finally I realized, oh, Harry Chapin had a concert in the Olympic Village last night. That's Harry Chapin.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So I realized who it was. I knew who it was. And I determined that at some point during a break between periods, I would introduce myself because I was a fan of some of his songs.
Yeah.
But every time that the period ended, every time we had a slight break, he left, went to get a soft drink or whatever. And the only interaction we ever had was after the tying goal when we grabbed each other and hugged each other and jumped up and down. And then after Eruzione's winning goal, when we grabbed each other and hugged each other and jumped up and down. No exchanging of identities, no hello, no words, nothing of that nature, just the pure, unadulterated physical celebration of what had gone on the ice.
Oh, yeah. And it's
never saw Harry Chapin again. And sometime early the following year, he was dead on the Long Island Expressway in a car truck collision.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really know too much about Harry Chapin. My 16-year-old daughter actually started listening to him, and I overheard it from her bedroom. And I'm like, "You're listening to Harry Chapin? Oh yeah, he's great. The songwriting." I'm like, okay, you're taking me back. What a great story. I mean, that's
in Frisco. Yeah, I need one more fare to make my night.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just so visual. So visual. That's the power of sports, right? I mean, you could be at any game, anywhere. You're high-fiving people when your team scores the winning basket or goal or whatever it is. Even in boxing,
we're all equal then.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That's a great story, man. So wait, fast forward. So then you got to get the interview, right, with Eruzione and Jim Craig. So
I got to get the interview with somebody. I'm not fixated on who it's going to be. Yeah. I just need a player, or Brooks or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I managed to get into the tunnel outside of the American dressing room and locker room, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And I start watching people come out, and I'm at one end of the hallway, and they're coming out and turning the other way. So everybody who leaves that locker room is 30 feet away from me when they come out the door. And then moments later, they're 40 or 50 feet away, and it's chaos. Yeah. And, there are photographers and other reporters there, et cetera, other people trying to get interviews.
Yeah.
And I yell at the first 5 or 6 players that I recognize, and they don't hear my voice. They don't respond. And the last player to come out of the locker room is Eruzione. And we had the same agent, and I had met him too, just as I had met the venue manager. Yeah. I had met Mike. And I yelled, Mike, I need, and somehow he heard me.
Yeah.
And he turned around and he came to me, and I explained it. I said, we're going off the air tonight. We're showing the game on tape. There's a 7-minute gap at the end of the game between that and the end of the telecast. I have to get an interview. McKay's going to throw to me. And I need you. I need you to stay with me. I need you to join me. I need you to do this. And he said, well, I don't know if I can do that. I'm going to dinner with Jimmy Craig and his dad. I said, where are you going to dinner? He said, it's a little Italian restaurant on a main street in Lake Placid. I said, guess who's buying the dinner? So I didn't go into the restaurant to eat with them. I did pay their bill. And Eruzione and Craig came and stood outside the restaurant on Main Street, Lake Placid with me. Eventually, because of the camera and the two of them, a crowd of probably 1,500, 2,000 people gathered behind us, filling out the shot nicely for the cameraman.
Right.
And just before McKay threw it to me, I turned to Mike and I said, Mike, if we had stood here at this same moment last night, and he filled in the blank and said, nobody would have noticed.
Yeah, right.
And I said, yeah, well, life has changed, and particularly for you. And then after that, I think I make the point in the book that after that, there were several Olympic gatherings, remembrances, things of that nature, where I would be once again in the company of the hockey team, and specifically with Mike. And every time I saw Mike after that, probably 5 or 6 times, I would say to him, it was a routine. I would say, Mike, via the vehicle of videotape, you are now the leading goal scorer in the history of hockey. He would always say, Jim, keeps going in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
Keeps going in.
Yeah.
And uh, and it's arguably the single greatest, most unpredictable moment in the history of American sports, because there was no way that team could beat the Russians. That
No.
was not possible. Stay in the game with them,
Yeah.
not possible. So they had pulled off a completely impossible thing.
Yeah.
And of course, it only happened because of Brooks. I
Yeah.
tell people all the time, it's the greatest coaching job ever done in any sport by anyone, and he achieved it by making them hate him.
Mm.
He redirected all of their emotions
Yeah.
toward him. He
Crazy.
got them to look past their physical deficiency or their technical deficiency against the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
He got them to channel all of that into nothing other than, God damn it,
Yeah.
we are going to prove to this asshole
Mm-hmm.
that we can do what he says we can't do. And he got it. He
Yeah.
got that. He got that otherworldly performance out of them. And it still cracks me up to this day.
Incredible. Well, it's a great story in the book, but you tell it even better than in the book. The book was great. The story.
I tell that story better in the book.
Yeah.
And I tell the Franz Klammer story better in the book too.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, man. I mean, I don't want to short shrift tennis, which you obviously became legendary doing tennis, and I would love to talk to you about Arthur Ashe, but you're so eloquent in the book. So people are going to just have to read the book. You know what I mean? Jim, I talked earlier at the beginning about how you and I sort of cross paths, and we were in the same events, and a lot of life history, very similar, and things really stuck out in your book. And you were incredibly forthcoming and very, very honest in your book, especially about your personal life and your struggles. And look, I worked in professional sports almost as long as you, and I know what a minefield that is. And I, too, actually lived at the Oakwood Garden Apartments as a single dad. So when I saw that, I highlighted it. I'm like, I got to talk to
you
about
are under a common watchword.
Yeah, we did. And I just want to go back to the title of your book, It Happened, and where you are now, okay? Because to me, I've been in recovery now 24, 25 years. To me, things just don't happen. They happen for a reason. They happen because I had to go through whatever I had to go through to get to this point. So look where you are now, Jim. I mean, it happened. You're retired. You're back in North Carolina. You're with a partner who you adore and adores you and supportive. You're teaching a class. I mean, do you look at it happened that way as well as your journey?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the applicability, the efficacy of my title is, number one, that I said it on the air,
Mm-hmm.
and I said it at a very significant moment, and I said it with respect to someone I cared about and a tremendous accomplishment in his life, and all of that now stands out in even bolder relief because of his untimely departure.
Yeah.
But there is the whole book is a tribute to the power of luck, circumstance, the unpredictable, the things that happened to me couldn't happen. And some of what happened to me was the experience of watching things happen to athletes and other people in the sports world that couldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
The miracle on ice couldn't happen.
Right.
Franz Klammer winning the downhill by going to every wrong point on the course at Patrick Hoefel Mountain couldn't happen.
Right.
And you can go on through the book and through my life with the things that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and either shouldn't or couldn't realistically have happened. So it's the ideal title for me, and the simple fact that it's one of my two most memorable narrations of any sports event that I ever called make it very effective for the book.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple of quotes. You have a quote yourself that says, quote, "I went forward on a path of working life success and personal life chaos." I can totally relate to that. Thank you very much for writing that and putting it actually in words.
There are a lot of people who can relate to that.
For sure. And then you had a great quote about Mike Tyson, which I think maybe relates to you, but definitely for me, that his greatest victory as an adult is that through a hard path, he found a way for his life to make him happy. And
There's no question about that.
what a beautiful quote.
Mike has, a lot of people took a long time to recognize it. I think they get it now. Mike has a big mind. Mike is no idiot, and he has had occasion to think long and hard about his unusual and unexpected life. And so if I said something meaningful about him, I'm proud of that because I'm proud of the friendship, and I'm proud of everything he has done in recovery from the circumstances that once bedeviled his life. I hope it's just like with George, but a much younger version. I hope Mike is happy. I really I pray for that. And he's one of a variety of friends for whom I think the same thing. And all those friends were given to me by my extremely lucky life as a sports broadcaster.
Yeah, I love it. My biggest Mike memory is the Tyson Spinks fight in '88, right? 91 seconds in Atlantic City, which people weren't even in their seats yet. I think that for some reason I'm remembering that the fight started a little earlier because the undercard was like a quick undercard, and people are filing in. The fight starts, and then it's over, right? What a crazy scene that was, and I think I took half a roll of film.
I point out, that was my first Wimbledon.
Yeah,
and I had gone all the way to London and done rehearsals and done stuff like that. And now a group of us from HBO got on a plane, flew back to New York, went to Atlantic City, prepared for one day, did the Tyson Spinks fight, 31 seconds, got on a plane, flew back to London, and continued the fortnight of Wimbledon. So it was this remarkably enclosed experience, one small time capsule. And the outcome was shocking. And the other thing I remember about that is that before they came into the ring, you could hear, and Spinks could hear, Tyson banging his glove against the wall of his dressing room. In what was either a brilliant intimidation tactic or just an accidental benefit he wasn't thinking of. But there's no question that Spinks was affected by the sound of Tyson banging the wall.
Oh, for sure. My quick story on that, Jim, is that, I'm in my position, an elevated position, and, lights go out and they play music, and Spinks comes in with his entourage, and they spread the ropes, and he gets in, he's doing some little shadow boxing. Then the lights go out again, and the jungle music starts, right? It was like this real heavy, like jungle drums, the whole thing that Mike always had. And here comes Mike with the, with the towel, with the cutout thing, and he comes in the ring, and I'll never forget this. And I'm trying to shoot the whole kind of situation, but I'm looking peripherally at Spinks, and as they split the ropes for Tyson to come in, I swear I saw Spinks take 2 steps back. It's like, what the hell am I doing in the ring with this guy? Well, really, I mean,
Mike at that moment was tremendously intimidating.
Crazy.
Which only makes what Buster did in Tokyo that much more impressive.
Incredible.
Buster looked right past it.
Yeah. Well, last thing, Jim. First of all, are you healthy? The hip is good. I just going to make sure, because you talk about your hip situation in the book, and
I'm walking these days. Yeah,
good.
17 hip dislocations. Could have died any one of those times.
God, you remind me of my dear lost friend, the late Bill Walton, and how many back surgeries and foot surgeries he went through. And
we were neighbors in San Diego.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And we talked about it. During the period of time when I was enduring the 17 hip dislocations and getting the ball put back into the socket over and over and again, I would run into Bill. And Bill would ask me, "How's your hip?" And I would say, "Forget my hip. How are your feet?" Etc. So Bill was a friend, and an unforgettable friend.
Yeah, me too.
Neighbor in I lived in North County. He lived down by Balboa Park.
Hmm.
But we found occasion to see each other fairly frequently.
Yeah,
And,
it's beautiful.
obviously, if I were still living there, I'm not, but if I were still living there, I would miss him.
Yeah, I miss him every day. I mean, he was a great friend, and he was the first guest on the podcast, by the way, 7 years ago. You're like the 268th guest, literally, and he was the first one. I asked him, this is a true story. I asked him a question and put the mic down because he went on for like 40 minutes without a break.
Yeah.
I love him. I love him
Yeah,
forever.
that's Bill. He's never at a loss for words.
No, never. So last thing, Jim, you're back in your roots, basically, in North Carolina. You're teaching a class, which is amazing.
Well, I'm taking a break from teaching right now.
Uh-huh.
I am discussing the possibility of moving from the communications department to the media and journalism department. Please don't bother to ask why there are two separate departments that seem to be doing in some ways the same things at the University of North Carolina. That goes to academic politics, that goes to a personality conflict between two extremely prominent educators back in the late 60s and early 1970s. It's an anomaly. It shouldn't be the case, but it is.
Yeah.
But I was teaching in the communications department, a course that I created and developed, Evolution of Storytelling in American Electronic News Media. I very purposely did a course about news media rather than sports media because obviously they mean more to our lives. And I taught for 5 semesters. I probably had a total of 180, maybe 200 students in all. And I wound up very, very deeply frustrated because I could not get them to bend away from their preference for gathering news from social media. And I would walk into class about once every 5 or 6 class sessions and say, if you choose every morning to get your first dose of daily news, to first find out what's going on in the world from your preferred social media feed, you are asking to be subdivided, you're asking to be colonized, you're asking to be misled, you're probably asking to be lied to. There's a reason why conventional news media still exist. There's a reason why professional reporters still exist. There's a reason why those professional reporters have editors. You should pay attention to that. Don't come into this class armed only with what you got on social media because I don't recognize it. I don't pay any attention to it. I don't respect it.
Yeah.
So that disconnect became wider every semester, and the gulf could not be bridged. And finally, I went to the head of the communication department and said, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. And now I have an outreach from the media and journalism department.
Okay.
Are you interested in bringing the course over here with appropriate revisions? And my first answer to them, which they didn't love, was, well, I don't know what the appropriate revisions are because I don't know what the difference is between the department in which I was teaching and the department that you run. I know that you have 2 separate titles, but you're in 2 different buildings. But that's really all I know about the difference. You would have to educate me. That education hasn't taken place, but I'm thinking of it. Maybe down the road, I will consider that. I do have a friend who's a member of the board of the media and journalism department, and he is very, very eager for me to teach there. But it was a withering experience for me.
Yeah. Well, you and I could go on about that for decades because I had the same experience at my alma mater, Art Center College of Design, where like the word film, like these kids never heard. It's like a 4-letter word that starts with F. It's like they have no idea what film was, and the evolution of the craft and everything. Everything's with the phone. Anyway, it's a whole other thing. But Jim, I'm just gonna put it out there. If you do teach that class and you need a sports photographer with a little bit of experience with some stories, I will fly down there and gladly guest teach. So let me
Consider
know.
yourself speculatively booked for an appearance at the
I
University
love
of
it.
North
I will.
Carolina. Have you ever been to Chapel Hill?
I've never been there, and it's so weird that I haven't. I didn't really ever shoot much college sports. I shot over 5,000 NBA games in my career, smattering of college sports in the LA area, of course, because you can't resist it, men and women. But never been there. Coach K at Duke is one of my true great friends and mentors in the business. Would love to go visit him too. So giving me more reason to get on a
So you've
plane.
been to Durham and you haven't been to Chapel
I
Hill?
have not been to Durham, but I spent many, many, many summers with Coach K as the coach of USA Basketball, and privy to all of his pregame speeches and all of his motivational talks that he gave to the team and dinners, and just one of the great guys of all time. Plus, he's a
I have
Springsteen
a lot of
fan.
respect for him, regardless of where he coached.
Yeah, there you go. Plus, he's a Springsteen fan, so anybody who loves Bruce is definitely in my corner. So, anyway, Jim, listen, it's so great to
Favorite
to meet you.
Springsteen song?
Oh, jeez. If I had to name one, it'd probably have to be Jungle Land. It's like asking me what's my favorite photo. I got a few up here, but and I got 4 kids, so you can't ask me who's my favorite kid, because I might have a favorite every once in a while more than the other. But definitely Jungle Land, I think. And what about you? You've been to any Bruce shows in your time?
Okay, probably been to 9 Bruce Springsteen concerts.
There you go.
Various different venues. The
Uh-huh.
first one was at the Brendan Byrne Arena in New
Sure.
Jersey.
Oh,
I've
that's
seen him in the
Mecca.
garden. I've
Yeah.
seen him in a variety of places.
Yeah.
I have an odd choice as my favorite song, and obviously Jungle Land is great,
Mm-hmm.
and The River is meaningful, and Thunder Road is iconic in a lot of ways.
Sure. Yeah.
Ties That Bind is my private thrill. Okay,
That's a great song.
I'll say to people, I'm going to play you my favorite Springsteen song, and they say, "Oh, I've never heard that." And I say, "Face the Ties That Bind."
Yeah, that's a beautiful song. Yeah, I mean, at different times in my life, different songs. Obviously, "Brilliant Disguise." "Tonight Our Bed Is Cold." "I'm Lost in the Darkness of Your Love." "God Have Mercy on the Man Who Doubts What He's Sure of." That hit home for a while and helped
Many
me.
dark lyrics.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah, I'm headed to the UK to see the startup of this tour is continuing. 75 and a half years old. This guy's still going. So I got to go there and experience it. But Jim, I hope we get a chance to see each other in person. Again, I always saw you on the other side in the blazer, and you're doing your thing, and we just our paths never crossed in the same world. It's so bizarre. But it's great to connect with you here on the Legends of Sport podcast, and I appreciate you taking the time, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for reading my book.
Oh, I love your book. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna promote the book. We're gonna obviously
let me just touch that base very quickly one more time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a week and a half since Foreman died.
Yes. Right.
The title comes from my call of his win over Michael Moore.
Yeah.
The prologue is about the 19-year-old me watching the 19-year-old him win his gold medal in Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
From what I can gather from the family, it appears that the cover blurb, which appears on the back just below John Grisham and above Billie Jean King, was his last public act.
Is that right?
So right now, I feel so connected to George.
Wow.
That it's almost eerie.
Yeah.
Deeply grieved that he's gone.
Yeah. At my rec room at home, I have a photo I took. I didn't shoot. I shot a lot of boxing, but not a lot of it hangs on my wall. But I had just a crazy shot of him and Holyfield from that fight. And it was just a moment in time that I framed, and it's been going from one place to the next.
Great fight.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that fight, and you'll find this in various places in boxing, that fight more than any other validated George's comeback.
Mm-hmm.
That made George a serious player in the heavyweight division instead of a cartoon show.
Yeah.
And Holyfield won the fight.
Yeah, wasn't George
you don't have to in boxing? You don't have to win.
Yeah.
To be a hero.
Yeah.
Under certain circumstances, you can lose and be a hero. George was a hero that night.
That's great. And, the fact that he couldn't really celebrate his gold medal in 68, I've talked Spencer Haywood's dear friend. We talked a lot about the whole experience at that Olympics. Now, it was really, they weren't greeted the African American athletes when they came back because of what happened.
Because of Smith and Carlos.
Yeah, and he still feels sort of, cheated and robbed by the public. I don't know if George felt that way, but Spencer certainly did. But anyway, Jim, we can go on and on, man. I really appreciate the time. I hope we get a chance to sit down and have a meal together. I'll come down there, man. We'll just chop it up over steak or something.
Well, I can tell we're kindred spirits. I'm sure that you have interviewed some people who wouldn't know Spencer Haywood.
That's unfortunate, yes. And
I know Spencer Haywood.
Oh, yeah, of course you do. And you know what he was responsible for. And, I've been to many NBA events where Spencer will look around and say, do you know how many people don't know who I am and what I did for them, like the money they're getting now? And this is a whole other podcast, right? But it was because I took the risk to do what I did. And they look, Adam Silver knows this. And
is he still alive?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Tell him Jim Lampley thinks he is a great man.
Of course.
And has thought he is a great man for 50 plus years.
Well, I will do that. And he probably would want to reach out to you just to say hi. He's that kind of guy. He's a wonderful, wonderful person.
You can give him my number or my email address. I'd be totally honored to talk to Spencer Haywood.
Well, that's great, Jim. I will do that. And
do you still live in the city?
Who, me or Spencer?
Oh, Spencer.
Spencer's in Vegas. He lives full time in Vegas. He lost his wife. This is after he really came back from the dead. I mean, he says that he pretty much almost died from cocaine, and the story is legendary. But he got himself better, and he's a super happy guy now, and very young. I don't know how old Spencer is. He's got to be in his late 70s, I guess, at this point. But I was recently, a couple of years ago, at the Showtime reunion that Pat Riley and Magic Johnson did in Maui. There's Spencer, and dancing and telling stories, and it was just so heartwarming. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. I'm a big admirer. I would appreciate if you can pass that along.
I will do that.
And I really enjoyed this, Andy.
Yeah, I did too, Jim. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Look forward to a personal contact sometime.
I hope so. And the offer's out there, so you need me, I'm coming.
Chapel Hill is a cult.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize the strength of this particular cult. Duke is a cult. There are two cults within 7 miles of each other.
Sure.
But now we've signed Bill Beichich.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. But yeah,
and
that's
a lot
crazy.
of people are so mystified and thrown for a loop. And why is Bill Beichich coaching at North Carolina? And they miss the simplest and most direct point, which is that his father was an assistant coach here in the 1950s, and he was a 4 and 5 and 6-year-old boy in Chapel Hill. And one thing I say to people is, if you've ever lived in Chapel Hill at any moment of your life, I don't care at what age, you don't forget. It's not something you shed from your consciousness.
Totally.
It stays in the woodwork.
Yeah.
So Belichick coming here to coach, as strange and as much of an anomaly as it seems, it's quite fitting. It's in keeping with one of the oldest traditions, which is we all come back.
That's right.
Came back.
Yeah.
Belichick coming back. He
Jim.
won the news conference when he said, my parents always taught me the first thing I learned to say out loud was beat Duke.
There you go. I love it. I get that same feeling when I go back to Brooklyn, where I grew up. I left Brooklyn in 1978, but it's still in my blood. And
Larry Merchant, halfback at Lafayette High School.
That's right.
135-pound halfback at Lafayette High.
We used to play them in every sport. They were always better than us. But
what was your high school?
Midwood. I went to Midwood, right next to Brooklyn College, where my dad taught. And
my second wife went to James Madison.
Madison, down the street from me. That was our arch rival. That was our arch rival. Was Madison, and of course my parents went to Erasmus, which is that's where they met.
Billy Cunningham,
Barbara Streisand. A lot
Oratorio cult.
Yeah. Well, Jim, listen, man. Thanks again. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. We will pick it up some other time in some other venue, but I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Andy, you and I could talk all week.
I love it.
See that.
Thank you, buddy.
I loved it. It was great.
Thanks, man. Good luck with the book. I wish I didn't say good luck, because everybody should be reading this book, whether you're a sports fan or not. But with your history and everything that you've seen, that we've all witnessed through you, is it's must reading. So I'm going to.
It happened.
Yeah, it
That's
happened.
all I can say.
Yeah. And so did this interview. So thank you, Jim.
All righty. Thanks,
Take care.
Andy. I'll talk to you later.
All right,
Bye-bye.
pal. Thank you. Well, this is one of those interviews I could have gone on for hours with my guest. So much to cover from Jim's 50 incredible years in broadcasting. Thanks to Jim for taking the time to chat with me so we could bring this episode to all of you. Folks, please be sure to check out Jim's terrific book, It Happened. So many terrific and amazing stories and so much wisdom in this book. Thanks for tuning into this episode and for continuing to support the Legends of Sport podcast presented by Fujifilm. Please follow them on Instagram at FujifilmX_US. That's at FujifilmX_US. Please tell all your friends to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Legends of Sport, and of course our Instagram at Legends of Sport, and my photography can be found on Instagram at ADB Photo Inc. As always, thank you to the great Carlin Barker, our producer, and our terrific editors, Sean Gosser and Addison Xiao. Thanks, everyone, for checking out this episode. We'll be back next week with another great episode on the Legends of Sport podcast presented by Fujifilm.